Frank Bauer had just turned 76 when he sat in the back pew of St. Paul's Church during the funeral of his old fishing buddy, Thomas. The chapel smelled faintly of wax and lilies, and the priest's voice echoed as he read from Ecclesiastes. Frank didn't hear the words. He was too focused on the framed photograph at the front of the room. Thomas smiling by the lake, a tackle box in hand, sun glinting off the water behind him. 2 months ago, Thomas had seemed fine. They had even gone fishing together. But now, just like that, he was gone. Heart failure, the family had said. Frank wasn't sure what that really meant. All he knew was that it had happened fast. He looked around the room, realizing most of the attendees were over 70, neighbors, churchgoers, poker friends. He thought back to the men he used to know, the ones who'd slowly disappeared. Not all had died of cancer or car accidents. Many had just slipped away. Quietly, often unexpectedly. Later that night, Frank sat on his porch with his wife, Ellen, and asked the question that had been simmering in his mind. Why are so many people dying after 75? And is there something we're missing? Ellen didn't know. But the next morning, Frank decided to find out. He started reading medical journals, health newsletters, interviews with geriatricians. What he found shocked him. The majority of deaths after age 75 weren't caused by rare diseases or freak incidents. They were the result of a handful of hidden, silent conditions that built up over years, often unnoticed until it was too late. Frank made a list of the 5 that kept appearing again and again, determined to understand them, not only to protect himself, but to share with his friends who were still here. Number 1, sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass. It wasn't something anyone talked about at the poker table, but sarcopenia was quietly killing people. After 50, most adults lost 1 to 2% of muscle mass every year. By 75, that added up. Frank remembered Thomas stumbling in the boat that last fishing trip. Balance isn't what it used to be, he joked. But it wasn't just about balance. Muscle loss affected metabolism, immunity, even breathing. And when older adults fell, they didn't always get back up. Frank added light strength training to his mornings, just resistance bands and bodyweight exercises. He didn't want to bulk up. He wanted to stay upright, strong, and independent. Number 2, chronic inflammation, the slow fire. Doctors called it inflammaging, a quiet, constant inflammation that simmered in the background of older bodies. It wasn't caused by one big infection or injury. It came from years of poor diet, stress, pollution, and sedentary living. Frank read that chronic inflammation played a role in nearly every major age-related illness: heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, even depression. It wasn't the inflammation you felt, like a sprained ankle. It was invisible, systemic, deadly. So he made changes. Swapped processed foods for real vegetables, cut back on sugar, walked every day, rain or shine, started meditating for 10 minutes each morning, even if he felt silly doing it. Inflammation's the fire that burns you down without smoke, one article said. Frank didn't want to burn. The 3, polypharmacy, too many meds. Frank always thought taking pills meant you were doing the right thing. Controlling your blood pressure, managing your cholesterol, sleeping better. But then he read about polypharmacy, the dangerous overlap of medications. Older adults often took 5 or more drugs daily. Side effects stacked up. One pill treated the side effect of another. Confusion, falls, kidney damage, internal bleeding, all from meds prescribed with good intentions. He took a hard look at his medicine cabinet, scheduled a visit with a pharmacist who helped him sort out what was essential and what could be reduced. With his doctor's supervision, he cut down from 7 medications to 4. It wasn't just about taking less, it was about taking wisely. Before, social isolation, the silent killer. Thomas had stopped going to poker night a few months before he died. Just too tired, he'd said. Frank hadn't thought much of it at the time, but study after study showed that loneliness was as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increased the risk of heart attack, stroke, dementia, and even early death. The problem was, isolation crept in slowly. Friends moved away, spouses passed, families got busy. Frank decided to double down on staying connected. He called his kids more often, joined a morning walking group at the park, helped organize weekly lunches for retired veterans. He wasn't just keeping busy, he was keeping alive. 5, unrecognized heart disease. It doesn't always hurt. Most people thought heart attacks were sudden, dramatic events, But for many over 75, heart disease built quietly. It didn't always show up as chest pain. Sometimes it was just fatigue, shortness of breath, or dizziness. Easy to dismiss. By the time it was caught, the damage was already done. Frank scheduled a full cardiac checkup. His EKG was fine, but his doctor recommended a stress test and calcium scan. They found early arterial plaque. Not serious yet, but worth addressing. He cleaned up his diet, walked more, kept his blood pressure under control. Small changes, big difference. A year later, Frank returned to St. Paul's, this time not for a funeral, but to give a talk. He had become something of a quiet crusader among his friends. He brought notes, statistics, even printed out a handout titled The 5 Hidden Causes of Death After 75 and What You Can Do About Them. He wasn't a doctor, just a man who didn't want to die from things he could prevent. We don't have to live forever, he said, but we don't need to leave earlier than we should. There were nods, even a few tears. He paused before finishing. Every one of these problems sneaks in quietly, but if you catch them, fight them, even a little, you stay here longer. And that's more time for your grandkids, your garden, your Sunday mornings, your life. The room was quiet. Frank folded his notes and smiled. He had done what Thomas never got the chance to do. Take a closer look, listen to the body, and act before it whispered its last warning.